Thank you very much for the reception. Distinguished and honourable, please note that. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today and for making the journey here to take part in this programme. Jesus, the bridge between us. That's the title for today. And I want to try and take that apart a little bit. The first bit is quite easy because the principle is that all our great religious leaders do not belong to any one community, but rather they belong to God. And if they belong to God, then they belong to all humankind. So therefore, Jesus has a message to bring for all humankind. Just in the same way that when we read in the Quran about Prophet Muhammad, it does not say that he is a blessing for a bunch of people called Muslims. It does not say that he is a blessing for a bunch of people who believe in him. But rather it says he is a blessing for all the worlds plural. Now you can imagine that the theologians have spent a great deal of time trying to work out what that means, but we needn't do that today. But a blessing for all the worlds. And when we speak of the Prophet as being al-Insan al-Kamil, we are translating that often as the perfect man. But of course his perfection does not lie in his masculinity, it lies in his humanity. Therefore, the perfect human being, the one who perfectly embodies, reflects, manifests the names, the qualities of God in our midst, to all humankind. Just in the same way, the Quran never speaks of itself as being a book of guidance for a bunch of people called Muslims. Rather, this is guidance for all humankind. And further, it says, not this is a revelation that has never been given before, but rather, this is coming to confirm and to correct that which came before. So the same essential message has been sent to all the peoples of the earth. A prophet has been sent to all the nations and all the peoples. Now, God would be unjust if God sends a partial message to the peoples of the earth. Rather, it must be a complete message which was sent to all God's prophets, to all those peoples. So we can see that we're talking here of something affecting all humankind. So we've got one end of the bridge. Jesus, a bridge between us. So the us is all humankind. Now, a bridge has to have two ends. So let's go in search of the other end of the bridge, which is to be God. So therefore, Jesus a bridge between God and humankind. One of the things that we want to say profoundly about God is that God is not a creature. God is not of this world. Everything that we see around us is part of the creation. God is the creator and stands outside, above, beyond. Now God stands beyond not just our created world, but all our words, all our languages, all our concepts. In other words, no matter how clever we are, no matter how much practice we have, no matter how sophisticated our philosophy, we can never ever reach into the world of God. So everything that we say about God, everything that we try to convey about God, is necessarily speaking about something of which we cannot penetrate. That is the unknowable, the all-eternal, the all-powerful, etc., etc., God. Let me just reinforce that with three little images. Because human beings always want to think, well, you know, we're really very special. And I'm a very clever person. So therefore, I ought to be able to, well, not just to tell you what it's like, but to tell God what it's like. You may remember an episode from the Quran in which Iblis, one of the jinn, does exactly that. He stands there and says, listen to me, God, you're making a big mistake sending human beings to the earth. They will do awful things upon the earth. Now you can see what's going on here. He is pitting his judgment, his understanding, his words against God. And the response is to say, I know what you know not. And then he is commanded to acknowledge the superiority of Adam. So this is always a danger that we have, to think that we know better than God and we can tell God how things should be. Another little image that I like is conveyed to us by the great Sufi master Rumi. And Rumi tells this story. A group of Muslims were ascending into paradise, and they reached the gate of paradise, and there they are greeted by Allah. And he says, you're most welcome, I am Allah. And they say, oh no, you're not. We take refuge in God from you. And God says, well, that's a bit, I wasn't expecting that. Tell me, what did you expect God to be like? And so they begin to explain what they thought God was like. And when they'd finished explaining, Allah turns himself into what they were expecting. And then they see and they realize, and then they bow down and prostrate before him. And then he turns himself back again into what he was. And now they realize that they had only a very small and partial understanding of what God was really like. This is the story from Rumi. Now, the final little episode. We often hear the words Allahu Akbar, and we hear them falsely translated. Either they are translated as God is good, God is great, God is the greatest. This, of course, is not what it means. What it means is God is greater than anything you can possibly imagine. God is greater than anything you can possibly think about or talk about. God is greater than all your philosophies and all your wonderful theologies. So no matter what you think and what you say, God is greater than it. Now, that sets the scene. We've got two ends of the bridge. We've got God and we've got all humankind. Now we need to explore a little bit the bridge itself, and that is the bridge of Jesus. Now Jesus figures, of course, as we have seen in the Quran, and of course he is central also to Christians and to Christianity. And Christian theologians from the very beginning have been struggling to try to explain and talk about who he is, why he is so important, what is his message. Now remember, they are using earthly words, earthly concepts, to try to speak about something which is beyond. That is, the nature of Jesus, the nature of God. One of the titles, one of the ways that we understand the person of Jesus in Christian tradition is to see he is the revealer and he is also the revelation. In other words, he is not just the bearer of a message, but he is that message himself. So he is revealing God to us as much as any human being possibly can. So that he is the message as well as being the one who reveals it to us. Now, we know that Aisha, one of the wives of the prophet, was asked, what is the prophet like? And she responds, if you have read the Quran, you have known the character of Muhammad, and if you know Muhammad, then you know the content of the Quran. And so we speak of him as being the living Quran. Now we're getting a little bit of an insight into the way then that Christians understand Jesus as this bridge. He is not just the bearer of the message, but rather the message itself. And we speak of him by saying he is the visibility of the invisible God. So what is he revealing? Well, he is revealing what it is to be fully human. What it is to be fully human, Christians would never accept that Jesus was anything less than fully human, born of Mary, as we have seen. So he is, we say, the fullness of humanity. But he's also revealing something else. That is, revealing the final destiny of what it is to be human. Because the final destiny of what it is to be human is to be in a complete union with God. A complete union, not just to be in the presence of God, not to be totally lost in God, like the term fana that we sometimes use, which means something like being totally absorbed, being annihilated. No, something more than that then is being revealed, and that is to be in a complete union with God while still revealing in his, while still keeping his own individuality. So then the bridge between God and us is saying that every human being bears within themselves the divine spirit. Every human being bears that of God which is breathed into us at our creation. You know that when two Hindus will meet, they will greet each other, Namaste. Namaste, of course, means I bow to the divinity within you. It is recognizing that every human being bears that divine spirit. Bears that divine spirit in a small portion, but capable of growing and growing and growing through this life, ultimately coming into this divine union. Now, the image, the destiny, the role model is given to be like Jesus, to be Christ-like, we say. That is to be fully, totally human, is to be also fully, totally united with God. That is the destiny of the human being, of all human beings. That's what we were created for. To be fully united in such a way that we keep our own identity, but also that we cannot in any way be separated from God. Now here's our problem, you see. Christian theology would never allow us to say that part of God dwells in Jesus, because God by definition cannot have parts. God is single, indivisible, so you cannot divide God up. Therefore, we have to say the fullness of God dwells in Jesus. But wait a minute, we also said that the divine dwells in each one of us. Therefore, you see, Jesus is revealing something as the bridge about what it is to be human. And what it is to be human is to be growing into our final destiny. Now, you have heard, I'm sure, Christians speaking of Jesus as Son of God. Now, this cannot possibly mean that God had a baby, it was a boy, and it was called Jesus. Far exalted is God above having children, for goodness sake. So it's not talking biology, but it is talking precisely about what we're saying. It is a title given to Jesus to try to explain this complete union between him and God, which is also the destiny of all humankind. So therefore, human beings are destined to become sons and daughters of God, if we use that terminology. In other words, closely, totally absorbed, united into that one indivisible divine being. So there we are, Christian and Muslim perspectives on Jesus, the bridge between us. So here is a Christian perspective of why we understand Jesus to be so important as the revealer not only of how to live a human life on this earth, but also of the destiny of all humankind to grow into that destiny in eternity. Thank you.